This is the Uncongress channel, and I'm Dr. Andy Yates, and we're here to talk about a very cheerful subject, which of course is oil. And the question is, when is it going to run out? Now, in 2014, quite famously, British Petroleum, BP, came out with a statement that said they thought that at current production levels, the oil would last until 2014. But that's a well, it depends type of question, because you can't just say, oh, that's how it's going to last, because that depends on current production levels, and they're changing. Now, they're increasing at the moment, but we would hope, wouldn't we, that it will actually decrease. Yeah, that would be a good thing, wouldn't it? If it would decrease. What would make it decrease? Well, we still need energy, and we need more and more energy as time goes on and the population increases. What would help us with our energy is other energy sources, that is, environmentally friendly energy sources. Because if you think about it, if you get more environmentally friendly energy sources, then our need for oil would go down. So the oil would last longer. However, there's another little factor that goes into this. Now, at the moment, we're all trying to keep that is the governments and the countries and so on, pretty much around the world have agreed that we don't want global warming to go more than 2 degrees C. And that's a target that we're aiming for fairly soon, actually. Well, how's that going to happen if we keep increasing our use of oil? Even if we're slowly bringing in environmentally friendly energy production. And I got to say, the UK is actually doing quite a good job. Last time I looked at the figures, it was 15% of our power is generated from what you might call renewable or environmentally friendly sources. So the UK is doing a good job. But I have heard some politicians say, well, why should we do so much of this? Because we're just like 2% of the problem. The rest of the world is the problem, not us. But I would say, as we're creating a new country in a way, and if and when we come out of the EU, we're going to be this bright, shiny, sovereign UK. Wouldn't it be nice if we were a bright, shiny, sovereign, environmentally friendly UK? All right. Seems a good time for me to mention that the full show, this show, 90 minutes, actually 100 minutes long, that I did on Saturday on Beetroot Radio, you've seen the website at the bottom of the page, is available on my website, which is also on the bottom of the page, right? So you can take a look at that. And this is the YouTube version, just to kind of spark your interest, or just to raise the issue so it fires you up and gets you doing things, right? So going back to oil, it's interesting when you look at the amount of oil that countries use around the world, how that fits with the current political and conflict situations. The biggest, no surprise, the biggest user of oil in the world is the United States, closely followed by China. Now, the USA, of course, is just been involved in Venezuela. Well, who are Venezuela and what's that got to do with it all? Well, Venezuela happens to be the largest reserve of oil on the planet. Now, if you control that, then you can keep your oil burning going far into the future. But of course, it didn't work, did it? We saw the USA and then other countries joined in to try and just decide some other guy should be the president because we decided. And it didn't work, basically. A lot of the world said, no, you're not going to do that. A lot of the world said, okay, we're with you, but we're not actually going to participate in this. UK was one of those. And basically, without invading the country, which is too much even for the USA, they basically said, as they've got no allies, they basically said, all right, we'll just kind of move on. So at some point in the future, I suspect that friendly overtones will be made to Venezuela, just as they were with Kim Jong-un. Different reason, but same thing. Who's got the best playing cards? Who's got the best hand? Because Kim Jong-un had nuclear weapons, simple as that. And it doesn't matter how much you wag your finger and threaten and use strong language, he's still got nuclear weapons. And that means you can't attack him. Not that they could hit the United States, but they could certainly hit places like South Korea. Obviously, that's next door. So that got left alone. Venezuela the same. Countries like Russia, China, India, the big ones, they need oil too. So they want to be friends with Venezuela so that they can use that oil. But of course, all of this is kind of defeating the object because we're still using oil. Now, there's a lot of talk about different ways of extracting oil. So you can go back to the old oil wells because generally speaking, the oil wells, the reservoir of oil underneath is under pressure and you make a hole in it and the oil pours out the top. But after a while, that pressure goes away and the oil stops coming out. Now you can put water in there, even CO2 in there to push the oil up or expand it or whatever so that more can be extracted. But of course that means we're still burning oil, doesn't it? Now, you might say it's a good thing to, well, the word they use is sequester CO2 in the ground. But basically what they're doing is extracting the CO2 from somewhere else underground, like from shale or from another oil well, and then using it compressed to push the oil out. Well, you're just moving the CO2 from one place to the other. It would be different if they were scrubbing it from the atmosphere, wouldn't it? Reducing the levels of CO2 in the atmosphere. But we haven't really got the technology to do that yet. Perhaps we will in the future. Seems to me a better idea would be to just reduce the amount of CO2 we're putting into the atmosphere. See, oil is a hydrocarbon, so it's hydrogen and carbon. When it burns, it mixes with oxygen and creates three things: water, which we like, energy, which we like, CO2, which we don't like. So that's the kind of thing we got to get rid of. Some countries, like China and India, don't actually have their own oil. So they've got to get oil from other places, which is why there's this wild scramble to try and lock in the oil resources in the future. And there's going to be this conflict continuing while we're still using oil. So the simple and simplistic idea is stop using oil. Because there are plenty of other ways we can do it. We can grow oil. Oils that are grown, vegetable oils, can be used to power vehicles, can be used for various different things. If we grew enough, we'd probably be able to use it in power stations or something like this. Trouble is, we need to grow an awful lot. And of course, we need also to grow food. And we need an awful lot of that as the population increases. So which one do you do? Chicken and egg, chicken and egg. We've got wind farms in the UK all around the shore. It's actually brilliant. I think it's a great idea. They're not very good looking and they do have an effect on the environment. But compared to increasing the CO2 in the environment and how that would hurt the animals, it's kind of like, well, is that the better choice? I think maybe it is. It's a better choice to have those wind farms and put up with those small effects. Because the ones they put in the sea, right? Yes, they might affect some birds. Yes, they might affect some migrations and stuff like this. Certainly, they will affect the local environment when they're built. But once they're built, everything calms down. You know, fish will come back. They'll be swimming around the base of the fans, you know, the big old windmills and stuff. They'll be, you know, they'll just get used to it. That's what animals do. They adapt and survive. So they'll be fine. So I think that's a really, really good idea. Wind farms are great. And the UK is leading on that in the world. So I think that's a brilliant thing. And that means we set an example, don't we, for the rest of the world. None of this, we're only a little tiny country because we're coming out of the EU on the understanding that we're big enough and strong enough as a sovereign country to stand on our own and still continue to be a player in the world, only a small one, but still, you know, a significant player in the world. So why not continue with this? Why not set that example? The other thing is, of course, looking at oil reserves, like the United States has probably got, I think it had 10 years, the statistics said a little while ago, just 10 years of its own oil in reserves. But now they found shale oil, that might be 15, 20 years. Britain has got 7 years. And that was a while back, that figure came out. So we have to keep bringing in this oil, which makes us, of course, kind of have to do what the people who provide that oil are telling us to do. I don't know about you, but I don't think that's a good thing. And I don't think that was the whole plan of gaining sovereignty and control, which was some of the theme of Brexit, was to get ourselves in a position whereby we were free to choose, free to make our own decisions and stuff like this. Because if we keep buying oil, for example, from the United States, we know that they will use that, as they have done in other countries. They will use that as leverage to force us to do some of the things they want. Like, you can trade with this country, but do not trade with the other country. Iran is a classic example of that, right? Because the Americans hate Iran. I've never really worked out why. Could it just be that Iran is one of the largest oil reserves in the world? Could be. Because you know that Iran, back in the 1950s, the democratically elected president of Iran said, you know what? British Petroleum and Royal Dutch Shell are kind of farming, drilling, sucking the oil out of Iranian soil. And that president said, you know what? This stuff is Iranian oil, not yours. We're going to nationalize the industry, take it away from privatization. And I guess they said, well, we're going to sell it to you, don't worry, but hey, it's Iranian oil. And British Petroleum, Royal Dutch Shell said, what? You can't do that. So they got together with the Americans, and the CIA got involved. And next thing you know, that president has been assassinated, and they've installed a king, the Shah of Iran. And how well did that work out? The Shah of Iran is, what can I say, a monarch who really didn't care very much for the people. In fact, didn't care at all. Got vast wealth, but didn't share it with the people. So eventually the people needed a cause to kind of congeal around, and they congealed around Islam. And then you got the Islamic Revolution, which is where it is now. But, you know, they've still got the oil. Better to be friendly with them while we reduce our oil usage and move to more environmentally friendly sources of energy. There is, of course, a question of nuclear energy. Well, nuclear energy, gosh, it's so ugly. And the problem is you're always going to have waste. A lot of the nuclear plants are very good at recycling the stuff, because that nuclear energy is still there, so they can still use it for other things, or maybe recycle it back into the power plant. But you are going to have some waste that they don't know, there's nothing they can do with it, and it's got to go somewhere. And once again, we can't just keep digging holes and putting it in there. Used to put it in the sea, but they've realized that ain't such a good thing, because the sea eventually breaks open the containers, and then that releases the radioactive material into the environment. Same thing if it's dug in the ground. We're just putting it off for a few years. I'm not sure that nuclear energy is the answer. And then you've only got to look at Fukushima, right? Long Island, Chernobyl, right? You've only got to look at those places, and that's what can happen if it goes wrong. Vast areas of land that are now just toxic, dreadful places. No, I don't think we want that. You certainly don't want that down the street from where you live right now. So that doesn't seem to be something we can do. So I think we need to continue with this process, because there's a lot of sociopaths who are just saying, oh, give me the money, give me the money, give me the money. I don't care about the long-term consequences. We need to send that message out from a personal level, perhaps through our politicians and so on, and from a country level to the rest of the world, and say, we got to stop. We've got to wind it down now. We're running out of time, because it's not all about the title of this show, When Will the Oil Run Out, right? It's about when do we have to stop using it. Even Mark Carney, the governor of the Bank of England, said, really, financially, the financial people should start to shift away from oil and move towards renewable resources and better using the resources we've got. Well, eventually the financial push will move it because the financial systems run the world right now. But it'll take time to get through. But he is sending that message out and saying, you know, it only makes sense. That's the way we're going, because we're going to come to a point where we can't burn anymore. It doesn't matter if there's some left. We won't be able to burn it because we've reached the limit, what we've agreed upon, and said, no, we can't. You just can't do it anymore because we're destroying our planet for us and the creatures that live on it. Not the planet. The planet will continue. We know that. But we're destroying it for us. Why would we want to do that? What have we achieved? What have we gained? You get the idea, right? So, I think, sorry, little dog, ticky-tacky on the floor, you know. So we've come to a place where we absolutely have to make that decision and move forward. You've heard people, David Attenborough, Prince Charles, all this kind of thing, talking about this kind of thing. They mean it, and it's serious. So I think the oil will not run out before we have to stop using it. There's a different way of looking at it, right? Same with coal, same with gas. I think it won't run out. It'll still be there. We could find a way of pulling it out. But we've decided, no, we're not going to anymore because our environment, where we live, the air we breathe, is much more important than just that economical push to use oil and continue to use oil until it actually runs dry. Ain't gonna happen. Ain't gonna happen, in my opinion. So what do you think? You up for nuclear weapons? Nuclear weapons, same thing. Nuclear power plants. Are you up for continuous use of oil until it's kind of we're squeaking the last drops out of the earth? And going above that 2 degrees C increase in global warming? I doubt it. I don't believe it. We're good people in this country. I don't believe you do. So what can we do, little old Britain? Well, we just need to send out that message, keep pushing on that and saying, look, let's move away from oil. Let's do the best we can. It's good for our country because we have to import the stuff. Makes us more independent, makes us more of a sovereign nation. Totally in line with what we're doing with the EU, totally in line with the referendum vote, moving away from dependencies on other countries. Gotta say, that includes the United States, by the way. And I'm not sure the United States is going to do what we tell them anyway, because we're going to mess up Northern Ireland. And they've said we won't do a trade deal with you if you mess up Northern Ireland and Ireland. If you mess up the backstop, the border, the Good Friday Agreement. So there you go. So that's my thoughts on oil. Hopefully it's got you thinking. My next show is going to be called Not So United Kingdom. Not So United Kingdom. And it's about exactly what we've just been talking about, the split between United Britain. Don't forget, my full show, that's about 100 minutes long, is on www.drrandyyates.com. Don't forget there are other YouTube videos that you can watch here on the Incongruous channel. Please, if you see them, like, share, subscribe. And that's about it. Let's keep pushing forward. Let's make this world a better place. Please, please, please. Put your heart, your soul into it, because it's the future of our kids and our grandkids. Maybe not us. I'm too old. Probably not going to see the worst of this. And with that said, this is the Incongruous channel. I'm Dr. Randy Yates. And please, take care.